So I think that's going to wrap up my opinions on season two. But to summarize, I think it's been a huge success, and I'm actually having more fun playing Tekken online right now than I think I've ever had before. I love the changes to my favorite characters. I'm a little bit sad about some changes to other characters, and I really sympathize with those of you out there who feel like the character that you specialize in has been neutered a little bit, because that's never fun. And so I think that's the main criticism most people who dislike season two are going to bring to the table, because overall, I think the changes have been a huge success, and it's a lot of fun to play Tekken right now, which is why we have all these big streamer dudes and more people just coming to the game and enjoying it. And it's just a great time to be a Tekken player, and I'm just excited to be a small part of that world right now. So thank you so much for watching the video.
On the 2nd of October 2018, less than 2 weeks after I uploaded the video that you just saw a clip from, Saudi Arabian journalist Jamal Khashoggi walked into his country's consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, to settle some paperwork relating to his upcoming marriage. Khashoggi had been living in the United States after fleeing Saudi Arabia due to political persecution in 2017. He was an outspoken progressive and government critic. After entering the consulate, Khashoggi was subsequently ambushed by 15 Saudi agents who brutally murdered and dismembered him. His separated body then disappeared, never to be seen again. It was determined by the CIA and United Nations that the assassination was ordered by the Crown Prince, heir apparent to the throne, and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman al Saud. If you're unfamiliar with Saudi Arabia as a country, it does not codify its laws but relies on ancient scripture and the arbitrary whims of its royal family to quite literally play God, casually deciding who gets to live or die, be a slave, drive a car, or fall in love. MSB, as His Highness is sometimes known, also happens to be one of the wealthiest human beings to ever live. In 2022, the Saudi crown purchased over 96% of the shares in Japanese video game developer SNK, effectively becoming its sole owner. SNK stated at the time that this change in ownership would not impact the design of future games. Curious then that soccer-playing superstar Cristiano Ronaldo was recently revealed as a playable character in upcoming SNK fighting game Fatal Fury: City of the Wolves. In case you are unaware, Ronaldo is a personal hero of MSB and currently works for him in Saudi Arabia after signing a €260 million deal with local soccer club Al Nasr. Ronaldo is one of the most famous athletes in the world and a hero to children across the globe. He is also a brutal rapist. Allegedly. Catherine Mayorga alleges that Ronaldo raped her in Las Vegas in 2009. While his guilt was never determined in a court of law, Ronaldo paid her $375,000 in private not to cooperate with any investigation into the incident. The reason I am personally convinced of Ronaldo's guilt is that the reputable publication Der Spiegel, who broke some of the early stories on the assault, are in possession of leaked documents that indicate that Ronaldo confessed to his lawyers that he did have sex with Mayorga and that it was non-consensual. The inclusion of Ronaldo in Fatal Fury had mixed reactions from fans, many claiming that his astronomical popularity will no doubt boost sales for the game amongst non-fans. Boosting the sales of fighting games to people who don't play fighting games is an ongoing trend that we will talk more about later. Fans, however, started scratching their heads when another real-life human being was revealed as a character in the upcoming game, some fucking Bosnian DJ who you've never heard of. Emir Kobolic, who performs under the fake Italian name Salvatore Ganacci, also happens to be a favorite of the homicidal crown prince and is scheduled to perform at a major event in Saudi Arabia later this year. Aren't fighting games magical? Hello, everybody. Many of you have left comments in the last few days asking me to comment on what's been happening with the release of Anna and Season 2 in Tekken, and you actually just already watched it. The clip at the beginning of this video is my review of the release of Anna and Season 2 for Tekken, but the previous entry in the franchise. I've been going back and looking at some of my old stuff, videos that I haven't thought about since I made them, to remind myself and maybe indicate to a couple of my ballooning number of critics that I'm not a hateful person who spews criticism for its own sake. I am actually a starry-eyed hardcore Tekken fan who, along with the rest of the player base, has seen my favorite hobby used and abused into a state that is now completely unrecognizable. I don't think I have to remind you of what's going on with fighting games in general, or specifically Tekken right now. Season 2 is a complete mess, and the only thing we know so far is that there will be an emergency patch later this month. It's going to address two specific things that relate to gameplay. Paul's Hammer of the Gods is no longer going to give him a guaranteed unblockable while standing for on block. And they're also going to adjust the new Jack 8 move, Make Some Noise. Ironic name for a move that is ruining a fighting game, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people have talked about why this patch is a huge problem, but I think one thing that hasn't been talked about enough is why Namco have fucked themselves and their entire community in such a big way with the way they rolled it out. So I just want to mention here at the beginning why I think that this could very likely spell the permanent end of the Tekken franchise as we know it. And if that sounds like complete hyperbole to you, hopefully by the end of the video you will at least see where I'm coming from. Namco released over 1,500 balance changes that were completely untested into an intricate and very competitive game. It ended up pushing the game in a direction that they have wanted to push it in for a very long time, but it is completely contrary to the wishes of the community. Now, these two changes that we know are going to happen this month are only scratching the surface of what is problematic about this patch. We also have chip damage on throw break in the game right now, and even though the reaction to that was so negative and dramatic that Namco basically had to promise to roll it back right away, that is also going to take something like a month for them to get to. It sounds like something that you could conceivably just hotfix right away, but that's simply not the way they operate. Now, if we look at the overall problems with Season 2, it relates to overpowered moves being introduced to most characters. We now have homing moves that hit from half screen, basically shutting down all movement. We have extremely powerful mids that give you constant advantage on block, locking your opponent down. And many of these moves, most of them, are the new moves that are being introduced for these characters in the season. And that means that you cannot simply roll back the changes or remove these moves. If you want to balance them out, you have to adjust them in a way where they are now not overpowered or ruining the game, but still serve some sort of purpose and aren't completely useless. And that is almost completely impossible to do. We know that 3 balance changes for Bandai Namco is going to take a number of weeks. Or up to a month to adjust if they keep their promise, which we shouldn't expect them to. So the dozens and dozens, potentially hundreds of changes that have to be made for this game to go back to a similar state that it was in during Season 1 is going to take months, if not years. And the community is abandoning this game at a pace that is crazy right now. The game is being boycotted by thousands and thousands of people. When I started writing the script for this video yesterday, 2,000 people had signed the boycott list. It's currently sitting at something like 4,500. So I don't think there's any way for Namco to rebalance or redesign, if they even have the competence and the ability and the will to do that, before this game is basically completely abandoned. At least by serious competitive players, legacy players, and the people who like to play Tekken and have played Tekken long term and have the intention of playing Tekken long term in the future. You might have, casual or low level players, but those people tend to be tourists in this culture and probably don't stick around. And so Namco have a huge, huge issue on their hands. I also want to mention here that even if we could just magically erase the second or the season 2 patch and go back to the state we were in previously, we are still dealing with an extremely poorly balanced game with a heat mechanic that nobody likes and goes against the core of what makes the franchise special. We also still have giant cheating cabals of hundreds and hundreds of members who sell and trade cheats in secret Discord servers and make up a sizable chunk of the entire player base. Namco have elected to not even mention, not even attempt to solve or talk about this issue in their recent update, and I think that is simply because they don't know what to do about it. They don't have the capacity to do anything about it. We have seen Namco talk about doing something about cheating at least 3 separate times throughout the years, but they have never implemented a single change of any consequence or even permanently banned someone in a way that worked to keep them from playing the game again. It is basically open season on cheating as much as you like in this game, and there are simple ways you can do it where you will basically never be punished and you can give yourself any rank you want. That means that the online ranked mode's point economy is strange, inflated, and doesn't reflect player skill in any significant way. And I would say that the current state that the game is in is, as far as anybody's concerned, both unwatchable and unplayable. So trying to get some sort of offline tournament or event going with the current patch is going to be embarrassing and impossible as well. Especially when we know that Bandai Namco like to censor and put a lid on all the negative criticism surrounding the game, especially at these events. We went to Evo Japan during the Leroy brokenness phase, and we were supposed to somehow pretend that this complete mistake in terms of balancing wasn't ruining, the scene as a whole at the time, right? So Namco are in a very, very dangerous spot, and it's difficult for me to imagine a path forward that leads to a playable or enjoyable version of Tekken that I at least recognize. The only small glimmer of hope that I've seen lately is this idea of a big boycott of thousands of people going against the current direction of the game and promising to not play it until something is done. However, we have to keep in mind that the people who are currently in charge of Tekken and developing this game have been doing so for a long time and have complete control over it. Not only do we know for a fact that they are bad at playing Tekken and probably couldn't beat you or I in a match if they had 1,000 tries, they also understand the game so poorly that they will put a move like Make Some Noise for Jack in the game. So the Paul thing with Hammer of the Gods is obviously an unintended interaction, but the Jack move is just an overpowered move that they put in the game, and it is probably working exactly as intended. If you are happy putting a move like Make Some Noise into Tekken, you don't know anything about how this game is played, and it's very, very worrying that the people that did put that move in the game are the ones that have complete control over balancing and design in the franchise. So not only would we have to have huge changes in the way the game is being balanced and designed right now, I basically think that the current leadership of the project all need to go, or serious changes have to be made to the leadership of this game for us to have a chance for this to get any better. And it just doesn't seem very realistic to me. Now, in my last few YouTube videos, I have been very, very critical not only of what Namco are doing with Tekken, but how some of the discourse on the game has shaped up online. And I have had demands for apologies to people, other content creators, and profiles within this community. And the reason I happily stand by everything I've said is the state that the game is in right now, and as bad as you think it is right now, that is how I started to feel about the game more than 6 years ago. And I then gradually tried to provide constructive, calm, and as concise criticism as I could over and over and over, and only saw the game slipping further and further into a direction that I pretty much knew would end us up where we're at right now. And I'm far from the only person who saw this. The writing was basically on the wall if you were willing to pay attention. But I would just like to go back now and show you a clip from one of my older videos to show that I'm not pulling this out of my ass, and that these problems are not something that have happened with Season 2 all of a sudden. It's actually a slippery slope into the abyss that we have been on for a really long time. Tekken 7 is supposed to be the casual Tekken, or casual actually isn't the right word. It's supposed to be the most beginner friendly, the least intimidating to start for someone who has little to no experience with fighting games. It was a stated main goal when this game was being developed, and I've listed a couple of the major things that went into Tekken 7 to make it that, as opposed to its predecessor Tag 2. I think the biggest one here might be the focus that seems to exist on 50-50 mix-ups, and I think the blanket nerf to movement has helped emphasize mix-ups, because when you're applying a true mix-up, experience becomes less of a factor. It doesn't matter that much how good your opponent is when they are genuinely forced to guess. And if the combo you can do when you mix successfully is so powerful that you almost end the round right away, then you can conceivably beat anybody, right? And this seems to be something that the developers are still worrying about. We've seen balance changes and communications that indicate that throughout the game's lifespan. And I think a good example is when Hell Sweeps were suddenly given tracking properties, and the stated justification was that if you are applying your mix-up and somebody knows how to neutralize that with movement, then that's not fun for you. And it was very uncomfortable for many of us. It was kind of like a bucket of ice water over the head, because it indicated this schism that seems to exist between the people who create the game and the people who play it. So as you can tell, some of us have been worrying about this new direction for Tekken for quite a long time. I think my own rose-colored goggles really fell off with the release of Leroy, especially when we found out that Bandai Namco had a pre-created set of nerfs for Leroy before the character was even in the game. In other words, they had a completely broken build for Leroy that they wanted to release first, probably to boost the sales of the DLC. And then when most people who were going to buy the character already had, they could introduce these nerfs and manage the long-term backlash of having a character that poorly balanced in the game. It didn't work out as a strategy for them. It ended up being a PR disaster, and it ruined a couple of tournaments. But this sort of gaslighting operation of trying to manage backlash by tricking the community is something that Bandai Namco would put into practice in a really big way. And it was about to get a whole lot worse with the release of Tekken 8. I just want to read a small list of other very embarrassing mistakes that Bandai Namco have made with this franchise since the release of Leroy. This is by no means a comprehensive list. It's just as much as I could fit on this piece of paper. We talked about the homing hell sweep thing, but before we leave that, I just want to mention that another thing that Bandai Namco do is that they take a couple of steps back and then one forward, and because the community has amnesia and we get so caught up in wanting to be positive and hype for the next thing, we forget to hold them accountable for some stuff. So with the hell sweep change, we all actually, in the same patch, had a buff to the Electric Wind Godfist on whiff, and it became almost impossible to whiff punish. This was a change that not even the Mishima players were looking for, and while they did revert the change to the Hell Sweep, the buffed Electric stayed in the game. We then had issues with Fakum Lam. They obviously made him too big in the trailer, and that didn't work on the stage. So the way they tried to fix it was to make parts of his body, his hurt box, intangible. You could not interact with his head. That meant that in some knockdown situations, your moves would just melt through him, and he was immune to damage, which was a huge issue. We then had balancing issues with the remaining characters in Season 4. But moving on to Tekken 8, I think one of the most despicable things that Bandai Namco have ever done done with this game is hiding the Tekken store until long after release, again to try and gaslight and trick the community, and to manage the review scores that they were getting online. It's a despicable move that I've called borderline, if not actually illegal in the past. I think it might be. They did the exact same thing with the Battle Pass, and we should mention that this is by far one of the most piss poor and pathetic battle passes in any game we've ever seen. For example, it contained a Blender sphere, so a completely free asset that you get with your animation software, an open source asset that Bandai Namco got for free and then tried to sell to their community. They then attacked modders because they want to sell mods and all of these customization items in the store in the Battle Pass. They had to go after the vibrant modding community in Tekken. They started copyright striking Tekken channels all over YouTube, and at least one creator completely lost their YouTube channel because of this aggressive attack that wasn't communicated about before the fact at all. They then lied and ignored the cheating issue for many, many years. Another thing that we've been talking about since like a long time ago. And Namco have, on many different occasions, promised or tried to do something about cheating, but they are just too incompetent or too uninterested to really do something about it. And it's now gotten to a point where we know that a sizable chunk of the community that play this game are just straight up cheaters using sophisticated software to trick people and to manipulate the rank online, to get things to come out automatically, reacting to the opponent's moves in really sophisticated ways, right? One of the reasons Bandai Namco could not fix the cheating issues in Tekken 7 was that save files and a lot of data for the game was stored locally on the device of the user. And so to fix that issue, all they needed to do was not build it in that way when they released Tekken 8. They decided to do it the exact same way again, probably because it was easy and cheap to do so. We then had the very embarrassing collaboration with Nike and their shoes, and we have Nike shoes in the game right now. To goof on that whole idea, I made a YouTube video where I intercut Namco's trailer for the Nike shoes with footage of a Nike factory in Indonesia where the workers live in horrible conditions, surrounded by open sewers, and when they try and organize into some sort of union, there are crackdowns and they are captured and tortured, right? It is the only YouTube video I have ever made out of the hundreds of videos that I have made that has been taken down by YouTube because of content guidelines. Apparently, it shows the endangerment of children. I personally believe that Bandai Namco are the ones who flagged my video to YouTube to get it taken down. For example, the documentary that I took the footage from is still up on YouTube, no problem, and I do recommend that you go watch it. I also think it's a little bit ironic that my video gets taken down for showing endangerment of children, but Nike and their collaborators at Bandai Namco, who profit off of that endangerment, didn't face any consequences at all, right? We then had Chipotle ads in the game in the Chipotle collaboration, so literal fast food ads in a $70 video game, and some community members, some prominent people, Anakin and FDX, sat down and did an actual ad for the game before this showed up. I thought it was very, very embarrassing, especially considering the price tag of this game to begin with. We then have Bandai Namco constantly lying and attacking the community on social media. And I think this is where we need to talk a little bit about Michael Murray. So I went to Evo Japan in 2019, and a bunch of people who had seen my YouTube channel wanted to come up and hang out, and I was talking to these guys, and some of them just said in passing, "Oh, Michael Murray, he's so frail. He banned me on Twitter because of something I said." And then somebody else said, "Oh, he banned me too." Turns out that every single person I was talking to had been banned by Michael Murray on Twitter, sometimes for benign jokes or saying something that wasn't even serious criticism at all. So we know for a fact that this very, very frail person has been banning, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of people on Twitter for many, many years. And that is a huge problem considering what he does for a living. That is a huge problem considering the fact that just a couple of days ago, Harada said, if you have feedback and criticism on this game, send it to me or Michael on Twitter. I don't know why we are sending our criticism to the private Twitter accounts of these two clowns, but that is the main avenue that we've had for feedback for the longest time. And now that we know that Michael Murray has such pathologically low self-esteem that he has been curating his Twitter into an echo chamber where only Glazers remain for years, is obviously one of the reasons that there's this disconnect and schism between the community and what's happening at Bandai Namco. Of course they don't know what we actually want and what we're looking for. They refuse to listen to us. They are constantly patronizing to the community, talking down to us, calling us an angry mob, whether we have valid criticism or not. It doesn't matter if we're freaking out or trying to be as constructive as possible, as long as we are not completely sucking up to the developers and saying we love everything about the game. We are completely ignored. They put on t-shirts that say don't ask us for shit and then just completely ignore or gaslight the community. It's just the way it's worked for years. And that is one of the reasons we end up in the situation we're in right now. We then have the Season 2 defensive patch is what I've written here, which is obviously a joke. I mean, I could go on, and you guys probably don't need refreshers on all these things. Anyway, they have mismanaged this game in a big way for a really, really long time. Leading up to the release of Tekken 8, we had the first trailers and previews showing the new heat mechanic, and I think heat is what I want to talk about next. Before the game was out, before we had tried it at all, we had only seen like a small feature showing sort of what he was going to be like. I made a video talking about how I thought it was a very, very worrying mechanic that was potentially going to lead to all of these problems. I want to show a clip from that now as well, and I just want you to keep in mind that as I'm talking here, the game isn't released and we haven't played with heat yet. So this is me trying to predict what sort of an impact it's going to have on the game going forward. Well, let's just say that if Jin's Demon Paw was a normal hit launcher, or if it was a plus on block mid, like, you know, closed the gap and gave you a free mix-up, I think it would be by far the best move in the entire game right now. So this is something extremely, extremely powerful. So how does this make the game lean towards being more aggressive, and how does it de-emphasize defense? I'm going to read a quote from the interview yesterday. This is something that Harada said and apparently believes. He says, if you're looking at esports, if you're looking at the esports scene where two people are the same kind of level, there might not be a lot of offense going on because it's hard for both players to open up their opponent and not a whole lot happens. So his concern is that if two people are good at the game, they defend too much and not much happens. And he's talking about esports here, and that is so extremely important and something we have to keep in mind when we think about the development of this game going forward, because Harada is head of esports at Namco. He's not the director of the game anymore. They work a lot with esports. They make a lot of their money on the offline esports scene, and so they want this game to be good to or fun to watch for spectators, maybe even more than they want it to be good or fun for people to actually play. Or they do at least really worry about the watchability of Tekken as an esport. Which is something I don't agree with it and think is strange, because if the game is good and the high level players enjoy it, then I think the enjoyability of watching that game sort of emerges from that. But you know, whatever, let's keep reading. And you can see this in boxing and other martial arts as well, which I think is completely irrelevant. Fighting games have nothing to do with real world martial arts. You know, there's fucking anime dude shooting lightning out his asshole and fighting like a robot in Times Square. There's not a lot of attacking going on. We want to make sure the game is entertaining to watch by motivating players to go on the offense and try and open their opponents up. Now, I think what happens when you have a defensive match in high-level Tekken, right, is that people are constantly prying and looking for openings in the opponent. It's not that they're just stalling and turtling, right? You're moving, looking, poking, trying to find patterns, trying to find openings, trying to do a whiff punish, right? And it becomes this really, really tense thing where it's like, who's going to make the first mistake, and who's going to be successful, who's going to get the hard read, you know? who's picking up on his opponent's movement and like getting the best reads. That is like at the core of what makes Tekken exciting to watch for me, and I think for a lot of people. And if you start attacking more instead of having that, if you have these built-in mechanics for breaking down defense and just getting to the mix-up game, I think that is a lot less exciting to watch. But I also need to say that I am not that fucking concerned with how interesting the game is to watch, because I want to play it, and I'm not that much of a huge fan of offline events and tournaments anymore, because I feel like they are less about the game and more marketing vehicles for the game and for other products that sponsor the events, right? I've made many jokes about Cup Noodle in the past, but for real, Namco make a lot of their money in these events. They get sponsorship money, but they also bring their new DLC and their new features and the new things they want to sell to these events, and that's how they get, you know, a marketing platform for those things. And so Namco are worrying about their money, in my opinion, when they are worrying about the watchability and the esports ability of the game. As somebody who mainly wants to play the game and wants to enjoy playing it at, you know, a reasonable level, it feels like the wrong direction to me, you know. I'm gonna have a bit of coffee right there. So when you have these mechanics such as the heat system that help or are supposed to help you break down turtles and get to an offensive game, what does that really do? Well, it's going to completely emphasize the mix-up aspect of Tekken, and it's going to de-emphasize defensive aspects such as movement, right? I think you can really tell in that last clip that at this point, my sort of hopeless feelings, my corrosive feelings towards the game had really started to seep into my content. Before I start wrapping this up, I would like to address what's been happening on the content creation side of this community throughout the entire process. I've been told many, many times over the last year that I need to be less combative and more constructive with my criticism. But as I think I've proven, at least to an extent with this video, that is something that I and many other members of the community tried for the longest time. And it didn't matter how respectful, how informative, how constructive we tried to be, we were simply ignored. I've been told that I owe FeedX an apology, but I think you can understand my frustration when I've been trying to blow the whistle on this trend for many, many years, seeing the game get progressively worse over and over again, then having Bandai Namco release another useless patch that fixes none of the problems with the game, and having a major YouTuber who gets hundreds of thousands of views create a video with a happy meme face and the title, "They're fixing everything." It's frustrating not because that video gets more views than I do. I mean, that video alone probably has more views than all the clips that you've seen of me in this video. It's frustrating because the really important message gets drowned out by all of that toxic positivity. Now, I started recording this video yesterday, and a couple of things have actually happened in the last 24 hours. FeedX has decided to step away from the game. He's going to take a break. The reaction to that has been dramatic because he is a large pillar of the community at this point. I personally think it's too little too late. There is no way someone as seemingly smart and great at the game as him didn't see the writing on the wall the same way we all did. Spaghetti Rip tweeted earlier that he thinks the boycott list, which I called the small glimmer of hope that we've had these last few years, a chance to finally make our voices heard, he called the list cringe. Or I think he said, "Does it make me a shill that I think the list is cringe?" And I can answer that question for him. You were already a shill. You were probably a giant shill. We saw you 2 weeks ago tweet that Bandai Namco are fantastic at communicating. Looking at this video, is that something that anybody can agree with? It might be one of the most delusional things ever said on Tekken. You're a shill because your opinion is seemingly for sale. We also had Main Man, by far the most famous content creator in the Tekken world, say that the Tekken community need to touch grass and not judge this Season 2 patch so quickly and so harshly, that we are a negative hive mind that only want to tear things down. But only 2 days later, he is now admitting himself that this is a really bad patch. I think that this patch is so bad that you would basically be committing community suicide if you try to support it or the development team at this point. And I don't think it counts when you flip-flop when things have gone this far. We could really have used you guys a long time ago. Maybe we could have saved Tekken before it really got this far. I want to give a big shout out to some of the amazing community members that I've been interacting with in these last few months. I think that Mike Hollow is an up and coming star in fighting games here on YouTube. Go and support him. He's been kind enough to have me on his show, and I've really enjoyed interacting with all the other great people that he has on there. I probably will not be making videos on Tekken going forward. It feels like a natural conclusion of my journey with this game, and let's be honest, it might be the conclusion of Tekken as a franchise anyway. But you've seen me transform from a starry-eyed hardcore fan into the corrosive critic that I eventually became. But that is a journey that we have made together as a community, not because we are hateful or uninformed, but because this game has been getting worse and worse and worse because of greed. And for those of us who really care about and love Tekken, it's been extremely hurtful. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you so much for watching all of the videos that I've made throughout the years. It's really been a dream come true. I can't believe that I actually managed to become a YouTuber. It's been so much fun, and for the most part, my interaction with the Tekken community has been absolutely fantastic. It's a lie that we are a hateful mob. It's a lie that we want to tear this game down. You can go back and look, and the vast majority of my videos have a 98% like ratio, and the comments are usually extremely funny. It's just been such a blast interacting with all of you. Now, the channel will still be here. I probably will still stream and upload stuff. Probably not on Tekken because, like I said, it just feels like the organic conclusion to this. But if the boycott list works, if Bandai Namco get rid of this incompetent leadership, if Tekken 8 manages to claw itself back to some sort of playable state, nobody in the world will be more excited to support it than I, and I would happily play the game again if that happened. Just doesn't seem very likely, and I think you can all see why I believe that to be the case. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you around.